Red one on top. I think it's kind of standard for all the cameras. I'll start at the top of the video. This camera's gonna be the same.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to tell it to record to the SD. So weirdly, the SD has more space on it than either of my.
But like, I'll look at the
So
I'm just gonna set
Yeah, so one issue with taping this here is that we have slightly two different angles from the two cameras, so neither camera's angle is going to be ideal. You're saying shift it just like left a little bit? Or...
Oh wait, this is all in the past.
I do not know how to wake this thing up from sleep. Oh, there.
Future-wise, ampersand bicycle club, transportation equity for all, Feet First, Beacon Hill, Safe Streets, Rainier Valley, Greenway, Safe Streets, Friends of Little Saigon, Bike Works, and Lit I-5. Woo! That was a mouthful. Yes. We're also thrilled to be at El Centro de la Raza, and also we want to thank our ASL interpreters, Aaron and Sierra. If you need ASL interpretation, they'll be up to the left of the stage, to the right if you're looking at the stage. Our focus tonight is on two interconnected issues facing our city: housing and transportation. These are complex, often emotional topics, and we're going to have a good dialogue and thoughtful dialogue. We have a very limited amount of time tonight and a lot of ground to cover, so it's essential that we make the most of it. That means creating a respectful environment where every candidate has a fair opportunity to speak and be heard. It means respecting your neighbor in the audience who are here to learn from the candidates and engage thoughtfully. Tonight, Crystal Fincher, our moderator, will be helping out and moderating this discussion. She is an award-winning political consultant for over a decade, helping candidate campaigns and ballot initiatives win on the West Coast. She is currently the co-executive director of KVRU 10 radio station and host of Hacks and Wonks, a podcast about Washington state politics and policy that covers what's happening, why it's happening, and what you can do about it. Crystal serves on the boards of the Progressive Alliance of Washington and the Urbanists. Here's to Crystal. A few logistics items before we start. The restroom is to my right, to your left. In addition to that, we have three candidate forums today. The first we'll see is District 2. The second is citywide. Then we're going to have a small little break, and then the mayoral candidates will begin. If you haven't already, please help yourself to the food in the back. We have banh mi's. And again, thank you for being here. Whether you've lived in Seattle for decades or just moved here, your presence matters. Let's lean in, listen closely, and come away better informed and with the choices ahead in August and in November. With that, please help me welcome Crystal to the stage, or right here, and make sure we have a good time.
Thank you. Well, I am ready to have a good time. Thank you all for joining us here today. So we're starting tonight with our candidates running for Seattle City Council District 2. This district includes the area where we are right now, including the Chinatown International District, Yesler Terrace, Beacon Hill, Rainier Valley, Mount Baker, Columbia City, and Rainier Beach. Very, very important parts of the city. We do, as we just talked about, have a very tight program tonight, and a lot of people we'd like to hear from. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question. We will also have a lightning round where candidates will answer a series of yes or no questions with the yes or no paddles that you have up there. That will allow us to get through a lot more material, and you know I love a lightning round. To the candidates, you will have a warning at 15 seconds in yellow. There's a timer up here in the front row, and then a red time is up running. If you continue speaking, I will need to cut you off to ensure that we're able to make it to all of the candidates and we're able to hear everybody's answers. We love excitement from the audience, but we ask that you do show your support and feedback silently for all of the candidates so that we don't disrupt the live stream or delay the program tonight. If you want to show support, you can cheer silently, give thumbs up or thumbs down, show your support that way. But again, we want to make sure that you do that. If you want to boo, you can also do that silently with a big thumbs down if you feel like it. But please be respectful of both these candidates and people watching on our live stream and later on video. So the questions that we're talking about tonight were submitted by sponsoring organizations as well as audience members on the registration form. So we're just about to get started. So we would like to welcome our District 2 candidates, Jeanie Chunn, Adonis Ducksworth, Jamie Fackler, and Eddie Lynn. So we'll begin with our lightning round questions. Please get your paddles ready. These are going to be really quick, and if you can't get a quick yes or no, we will just call it a waffle. So, starting out, do you own your home? Everybody says yes. Do you own rental property in Seattle? Everybody says no, with Jamie Fackler saying yes. Do you own property outside of Seattle? 3 candidates say no, with Adonis Ducksworth saying yes. If your campaign staff seeks to unionize, will you voluntarily recognize their effort? Everybody says yes. Are you participating in Seattle's democracy voucher program? Everybody says yes. Which is your personal primary mode of transportation? I'll say it, you raise your yes paddle if it's yours. Is car your primary mode of transportation? But car is Eddie's. Bus or train? We've got Jeanie, bike, nobody, and walking? Nobody. All right.
But you didn't mention skateboarding.
Skateboarding. There we go. I like it.
Or motorcycle. It's already like biased. Or motorcycle.
Do you, any kind of rolling, we'll call it that. Do you support changing the city's ethics code so that council members may vote on legislation even when they have a conflict of interest? Everybody says no. Do you believe more needs to be done to make transit safer in Seattle? Everybody says yes. Do you believe transit in Seattle is unsafe? Get them up or we're all calling waffles. Eddie says no. All 3 other candidates are waffling. Do you support adding more bus-only lanes to keep major bus lines fast and reliable? Everybody says yes. Do you support building more protected bike lanes to complete a safe D2 bike network? Everybody says yes. Should Seattle invest more in building new sidewalks than is currently allotted? Everybody says yes. Do you support connecting the city's 2 streetcar lines via a center city extension on First Avenue? Eddie says yes. Adonis says no. We've got Jamie Fackler saying no, and Jeanie is waffling. Do you believe that building more housing is necessary to make housing more affordable? Everybody said yes. Do you believe housing developers should be required to include a certain percentage of affordable housing units in developments? Eddie Lynn says no. The other 3 candidates say yes. Should Seattle modify tenant protections in response to landlord concerns? We've got Jeanie saying no. We've got Jamie saying no. We've got other candidates waffling. Should Seattle strengthen tenant protections? We've got everybody saying yes. In Mayor Harrell's proposed One Seattle Comprehensive Plan, are there too many neighborhood centers? Too many. We've got all candidates saying no. Do you support allowing small apartment buildings and condos in addition to townhomes in single family or neighborhood residential zones? Everybody says yes. Do you support height bonuses for small apartments or stacked flats? Everybody says yes. Jackson Park is a fenced-off golf course next to 2 light rail stations. Should Seattle pursue exploring other uses for this public space? We've got 3 candidates saying yes, with Adonis Ducksworth saying no. Mid-rise apartment zoning is where nearly all opportunities for accessible and affordable housing exist. Should Seattle add more apartment zoning than currently proposed in the comprehensive plan? Everybody says yes. Do you believe more revenue is necessary to fund Seattle's transportation and housing needs? Everybody says yes. Do you believe Seattle needs to reduce spending on transportation and housing and lessen the scope of planned projects? Do you believe Seattle needs to reduce spending on transportation and housing and lessen the scope of planned projects? Everybody says no. Mayor Harrell convened a revenue stabilization work group to identify equitable revenue options for Seattle. I'm going to list the 6 revenue sources they identified, and you're going to answer whether you support enacting that option. If you say yes to multiple answers, that does not mean you're in favor of enacting all of them together, just that each one you do say yes to is worth doing individually. Make sense? All right, expanding the Jumpstart payroll expense tax. Everybody says yes. A city-level capital gains tax, which would tax long-term capital gains above a certain threshold. Everybody says yes. High CEO pay ratio tax, which would tax businesses that have a high ratio of CEO pay to median worker compensation. Everybody says yes. A vacancy tax, which would be a tax on vacant residential or commercial units. Everybody says yes. Progressive real estate excise tax, which would add an additional tax increment on sales of property over a certain price. Everybody says yes. An estate tax levied on the estate based on total assets after allowable expenses and debts have been paid. Everybody says yes. And finally, an inheritance tax, similar to an estate tax, except the taxes are paid by the beneficiary as it's valued at the time of death. Everybody says yes. So they're all for all of the options. Will you vote to reauthorize the democracy voucher program in the August election? I'll say yes. In February, in the social housing vote, who voted for option 1A, which proposed a 5% tax on salaries over $1 million to fund the Seattle social housing developer option? 3 candidates voted for option 1A, which was a successful option. Eddie Lynn did not. Who voted for option 1B, which proposed using existing payroll taxes to fund the Seattle social housing developer? Eddie Lynn voted yes for that, the others did not. In 2024, did you vote to approve the Seattle transportation levy? I'll say yes. In 2024, did you vote for Kamala Harris for president? I'll say yes. In 2024, did you vote for Bob Ferguson for governor? Everybody says yes. In 2021, did you vote for Bruce Harrell for mayor? Adonis Ducksworth says yes. The other 3 candidates say no. In 2021, did you vote for Lorena Gonzalez for mayor? And the flip side of that, I'm assuming 3 candidates say yes, with Adonis Ducksworth saying no. All right, that concludes this lightning round. Thank you very much. So you can set those paddles aside, and we'll go into our long form, somewhat long, they're 1 minute, so we got to stick with that 1 minute. But starting off with Jeanie, what are your top transportation priorities for District 2?
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. I think safety is one of my top priorities for transportation needs, as well as looking at ensuring that we have safe, reliable, increasing bus routes, bus lanes, and then safe bike routes from running north-south into D2. I take the light rail, as I mentioned, as my main source of transportation. It was actually my requirement to my realtor. I said I want to live within 15-minute walk to a light rail station. And when I walk to the light rail station, there's an area that has no sidewalk. And obviously I'm an able-bodied person, and that's good for me, I'm fine, but I think about people that are in wheelchairs and won't have access, and we need to make sure that our city's safe in order to access that transportation.
Thank you. Adonis Ducksworth?
So my priorities are to stop people from speeding on Rainier and MLK by prioritizing bike, pedestrian, and transit safety on those arterials, plus stopping people from speeding throughout the neighborhoods. I've been doing outreach and engagement for the DOT, as well as policy, going all the way back to 2012 up until now, recently. So I would be one of the first candidates on city council since Rob Johnson to actually have transportation experience. And so another thing I want to do as well is I want to empower the professionals at SDOT to do the work that they know works to keep our streets safe. And also hold the DOT accountable for their plans that they set out to do rather than the pushback they get from the NIMBYs. So thanks.
Thank you. Jamie Fackler?
Yeah, thank you. So I was hit as pedestrian on Rainier Avenue South. And not far from where a 6-year-old child was hit on Sunday by a Jeep, just at the I-90 on and off ramps there, just north of I-90. So for me, prioritizing the work that's scheduled to happen is going to be a priority. We're about to stand up a new light rail station on Rainier, and we've got large density there with new apartment buildings, hundreds of units, and arguably one of the most dangerous light rail stations and intersections in the city, with freeway on and off ramps. And so for me, that's going to be a real priority. And then focusing on fixes at our light rail stations on MLK that are also incredibly dangerous. Thank you.
And Eddie Lynn?
Transportation safety, and I do want to clarify my answer earlier. I think light rail is generally safe. I think our buses, most of our bus lines are safe, but there are some safety issues with some of our bus lines. But it's the roads that really aren't safe. You know, there was a 6-year-old child that was hit. There was, you know, an elderly couple that was hit at MLK in Alaska with a casualty there, and that site has been, you know, we've had multiple casualties there. So we really need to slow down traffic, and that can mean narrowing our 2-lane roads. Those are the most dangerous. Those are where people are, you know, traveling above, you know, 40 or so on. And accessibility, making sure that our sidewalks, our roads, or our, you know, transportation system is accessible for all.
Thank you. Now we're going to start with Adonis. The question is, what is your specific plan for improving safety on MLK and Rainier?
Specifically on MLK, like I said, I think we need to stop people from speeding. So we need to figure out what to do with the outside lane. And that could be a number of things, a conversation to have with the community. That'd be great for buses, bikes, or some other form of transit. The other thing we can do for folks who are pedestrians and people who are driving. So I've been a part of the work that the DOT and Sound Transit have been doing for the past year, almost 2 years, trying to pilot and figure out how we can make things safer with the train coming through. And so where we're landing right now is with gates, pedestrian gates, as well as gates for people turning left. So that is on MLK, and on Rainier, I think it's a conversation we need to have with the community. So we've got education, engineering, or enforcement. My preference is for engineering, but right now folks are looking at different enforcement methods, including cameras. And so we do know that the speed cameras in the school zones actually do slow cars down. But these are conversations we gotta have with the community.
Thank you. Eddie?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. I mean, safety has to be a top priority. So it can include road diets, narrowing some of our roads, including the medians that were put on in Rainier down further south. I think that's a good start. Traffic cameras can be an interim measure. They do slow down traffic, and those proceeds should be dedicated to long-term engineering solutions, and there should be a lower cost for working families or lower income families who can't afford that high traffic ticket. There was a work group that was touring the MLK in Alaska recently, and there's an idea to have raised medians for crosswalks to help slow down traffic going through that intersection. I would support the gates, as well as the left turn lanes is certainly a major issue at grade light rail.
Thank you. Jamie?
Yeah, no, I think Adonis and Eddie are right there. I agree with both of those approaches. You know, but I think really we need to look to fixing light rail on MLK holistically and spending significant amounts of money And I would be interested in pushing on that, and pushing against Sound Transit to come up with funds to actually elevate or put that light rail below grade. You know, I think that we should be putting pressure on them, you know, because it is a real travesty that's happened to the community in there. You know, I agree with all these other folks, but I think it is really worth mentioning and what a travesty that is. As far as the intersections around the light rail stations, I'd be interested in shortening up the crossing times. You know, talked about raised sidewalks, but also doing lane reductions there so folks can get across the street faster. Thank you.
Jeanie?
I feel like there's a bunch of things that we can do, and I know that there was a study done in 2020, the Tool report, and I'd like to take that off the shelf to understand why it's been on the shelf for so long, because this has been an issue in MLK. It does talk about road diets, it does talk about other things that people have mentioned here. I would also think about, like, what are the immediate things that we can do to off the off-ramp of I-90? Are there rumble strips? Are there better lighting? Is there crosswalk signs that we could be enforcing there, or just putting in the interim to ensure that we can have immediate safety while we look at more long-term solutions? And I would also add, like, the traffic camera thing is really hard because we recognize under this current administration that information could be shared with ICE, and we want to keep our communities safe. And I also would say, if we do put that in there, I was thinking just like in Australia, they have a program where you can pay $20 a month if you do get a ticket. And I would say if we put those traffic cameras in, it's about awareness. That first year, all of that should be free. You just get a warning.
That is time. All right, our next question, we will start with Jamie. What's the top housing policy you would seek to change in the mayor's proposed One Seattle Comprehensive Plan?
Well, I'd like to see neighborhoods and centers expanded throughout the rest of the city. I'd like to see density around our great public investments, which are parks, transit hubs, light rail stations, fixed transit hubs, and schools. Those are our areas of our most significant public investment, and we look to the great cities of the world, and there's density around those areas. You know, and honestly, like, this is a result of you know, racist zoning practices that need to be re-examined and looked at. Folks of you know, communities of color, folks of lower income means, working class folks have been excluded from these great neighborhoods of the city, you know, and that needs to stop.
Thank you. Eddie?
So I would agree that we need to expand neighborhood centers and maintain all of them that have been identified. There were some more that were identified in an earlier version that were cut. But the neighborhood residential zones, former single-family zones, you know, that is the largest area of the city where we can add gentle density, and we should be doing everything we can to have walk-up apartments, stacked flats. You know, right now our zoning really encourages townhomes, and those aren't accessible, and they're just not great in terms of, you know, community building. I think we could do more if we had fourplexes, sixplexes with little courtyards, and there's ways that we could have both trees and housing if we allowed for more stacked flats.
Thank you. Jeanie?
Sorry. Yeah, I build upon that, stack flats. I feel like we don't need a minimum square footage in order to have that. I'd increase bonuses as well. I think that, you know, the housing issues, like, listen, there's so many of you that work in the housing sector here. Like, I see you. We know that those solutions are rooted in your hard work that you've been doing for decades. I want to build on that and listen to that. Also, like, at the end of the day, we made up these laws, and like, why can't we just require every developer to have one affordable unit in every single building that is built from this day forward? Let's look at that. Let's be bold. Let's be innovative. We know we don't have a housing crisis. Why can't we just require that and meet the moment?
Thank you. Adonis?
Yep, expanding our neighborhood centers for sure. Working with the Citywide Councilmembers to do that. Citywide, I'm representing District 2, so thinking about District 2, what we need down here along our high transit corridors, rather than going 800 feet to include the density, it would be great if we could go 2 to 3 blocks off of our high transit corridors to increase density. I think we've got a really good opportunity next year once we get into the lines of the comp plan to really look at how we can impact that zoning so we can build higher and more within those areas.
Thank you. This next question will begin with Eddie. Busy arterials like North Rainier have absorbed a lot of new dense housing. What should the city do to make these corridors safer and healthier for families that are living there?
So like Adonis just said, I mean, we've focused so much of our rental on arterials, directly on the arterials, and there's really no reason that we should limit density to the arterials. There is air pollution, and oftentimes it's not a safe location for families, for kids. But we do have apartment buildings on those arterials, and this is where we need to do, road diets, most likely, to narrow those rights of ways, and we can make safer like sidewalks and plant trees so that it creates a little bit of a barrier between the corridor, and it would also slow down traffic. Trees and road narrowing will slow down the traffic and reduce the air pollution.
Thank you. Jeanie?
Okay. I mean, yeah, everything Eddie just said is amazing. Like we should do all those things. We should plant more trees. We should look at air filtration systems in those buildings, providing support for people. I just think about environmental justice when we're thinking about kind of those areas. How are we expanding? How are we making sure that it's dense along those roadways? How are we reducing cars traveling on those paths and encouraging folk to take transit? Yeah, that's kind of one of the things I'm thinking about right now.
Adonis?
Yeah, so I grew up right over here off 19th and Hanford, just a few blocks over here off Hanford Street. We lived in a little triplex, it was a triplex, a couple blocks off of the main arterial, and that was pretty cool growing up. And stay with me now. When I was in the mayor's office, we worked on a project, a public safety thing with the council member up there to solve issues with prostitution and people shooting at each other. And so what we did is we closed 109th and 110th from Aurora so that you couldn't turn on those streets. Now, over here on 19th and off Hanford Street, I see they've closed Hanford Street. And so in some of these busier areas off the arterial, I would be open to closing some of those side streets because you know what's happened up on Aurora? Those side streets have become places that people can play and hang out. You know what I'm saying? So even though it started out as a public safety measure, it has turned into a great people's street where you close the side streets so cars can't turn down those side streets, and they're doing it right over here on Hanford Street. And it's like, oh man, I could skate all up and down Hanford Street without having to worry about a car. Anyways, I think that's cool.
Thank you. And Jamie?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yep. Busy arterials like North Rainier Avenue have absorbed a lot of new dense housing. What should the city do to make these corridors safer and healthier for families that are living there?
Yeah, it's really, the South End once again is just a result of poor, there's just the vanguard of poor public urban planning. Density around these arterials is terrible for all the reasons mentioned, pollution, but again, it's just not safe for families. So I think North Rainier, I think we need to look at, there's a plan to put raised crosswalks onto those off ramps, but I really think we need to stop the traffic coming off of I-90 with stoplights and actually meter those crossings so they're significantly safer. I don't think the raised crosswalks and the flashing yellow lights are gonna solve that. And again, Mass, we've got a ton of density there, and we have a light rail station coming in, and that is at the northern end of Rainier, so thank you.
Thank you. Now we will start with Jeanie. South Seattle has comparatively less safe bike routes than many other neighborhoods. What are your top priorities for bike safety in District 2?
I mean, again, I'm going to mention the Tool report that was made in 2020, and the levy that was just passed. It's been 10 years. We approved another one 10 years ago, and D2 was left behind. We don't even have bike lanes, and those ones up north are being repaired. So I think it is a priority. Talking to people that are out in community like Cascade Bike Club, thinking about how are we going to make that north-south route along MLK safe in order to get folks from Rainier Beach into Mount Baker Light Rail Station. And so that would be a priority. I'd gather the folks together that are bicycle advocates, that are pedestrians, that are, you know, working with SDOT, Adonis, because you'll still be working there, just kidding. We'll make sure you're in the room. Yeah, gather the people and make it happen. I think is a priority that we need to make sure that people are able to commute safely by bike.
Thank you. Adonis?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about connections, so connecting, you know, Swift, Albro, Columbian, Wilson, making sure we get good connections going on there, but also better bike barriers. They seem to be working on MLK, they work on Dearborn as a way to keep bikes safe, and if you happen to be driving a car, I think it gives people driving cars a little bit more certainty too. And so as folks, as they see more of those things and we connect to places like out here on Beacon, and people feel safe and they see more of those and they see more people biking, they become a lot more comfortable around people riding bikes. So yeah, let's make connections and let's build those better bike barriers.
Thank you. Jamie?
Yeah, definitely build the connections, make better bike barriers. I've been hit as a cyclist commuting to work. It's real important to me. You know, we live in Rainier Beach. Our son was looking at high schools and got accepted to Raceback a couple of years ago. And one real concern was, how's he gonna get to school, right? It's, you know, there's no connected bike lanes crossing the Boeing access road. You know, and so to me, and there's even no sidewalks there. This is obviously Tukwillah's jurisdiction, but there's an opportunity to really connect our community by working with these other jurisdictions to complete those bike lanes. And so our kid didn't go to Raceback and part of the reasoning was that, you know, there wasn't a good way for him to get there, right? So we need to give kids the opportunity to live a life that is outside of a car, that is on a bicycle, and is on public transit.
Thank you. Eddie?
Connections, you know, there was a lot of bike lanes that were not connected, so for thankfully now here on Beacon Ave, it's a really great connection from Alaskan to Beacon to North Beacon. And bike lanes make it safer for all users, not just bicyclists. They make it safer for pedestrians and for drivers as well. And then just bigger picture, the more we have, you know, denser walkable neighborhoods with corner stores, it makes it, you know, feasible for people to not be in their vehicles. And the less we, you know, the more we transition away from cars to biking, to walking, to transit, it's just going to make it safer for all, which is why we need the dense walkable neighborhoods and corner stores sort of throughout the city.
Thank you very much. Well, we just have a little bit of time left, so we're going to try and do one more question and make it fast if we can. The Seattle Transit Measure is up for renewal. The measure purchases $50 million worth of transit service from Metro every year. What is the number one thing that should be prioritized with those investments? Starting with Adonis.
Service and reliability. More buses, more reliable. Just one?
That's the top thing.
Oh, okay, all right.
All right.
And more, and we need to give our kids and people who are working, our workers, more access to transit. And so expanding the free Orca card program through the STM. And then also just making the stops better.
Thank you. Jamie?
Is this the one that's funded by sales tax?
I don't know if the Seattle Transit Measure is funded by sales tax.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
it is.
that's the one thing that I would change. We need progressive revenue. This should not be funded by working families. This should be funded by the wealthiest corporations in our city.
So you would change the funding mechanism?
I would change the funding mechanism.
Got it. Eddie?
I would service the Orca cards, and I believe it also funds accessibility. So maintaining accessibility for those folks.
When you say service Orca cards, are you talking about subsidizing costs?
Just maintaining regular bus service, and then yes, maintaining the free Orca cards for youth, and then also in terms of accessibility, I believe there's special services for folks that need accessibility rides and so on.
Excellent, thank you. Jeanie?
I feel like I'm really getting education from all y'all on this. It is not something that I am studied on, and I mean, I'm gonna have to agree with Jamie, like why are the working class people paying for this? They're the ones that are taking transit the most, you know, but I do believe in reliable, steady service. I do think that also we need to look at like onboarding more folks to drive and run these trains for us. My understanding is there is a shortage right now, and how we're encouraging folks that these are good jobs to get us around the city.
Well, thank you so much. That concludes all the questions for our District 2 candidates. Thank you very much to Jeanie Chunn, Adonis Ducksworth, Jamie Fackler, and Eddie Lynn for sharing your perspectives with us this evening. Thank you. Now we will have a brief transition, and next up will be the candidates running for Seattle City Council citywide positions.
Could be easier than stitching together all these.
here.
No, you're good. Cool.
Thank you so much. A couple of housekeeping items. One, there are a number of open seats actually here near the front. So if you're in the back, please move forward. Raise your hand if there's an open seat next to you up there so people know where they are. Come on down and have a seat. Get comfy, get cozy.
I think if I go
All right.
at the edge of the
Thank you. Keep filling those seats in. We've got a number of them up here. So we're going to begin our second panel tonight. These are candidates running for the citywide positions on Seattle City Council. They will represent the entire city. Again, Seattle has 9 council members that work together to pass laws, approve the city budget, and set long-term plans for growth and development, and hold agencies accountable to the public. 7 of those council members represent specific districts, and 2 are responsible for representing the entire city. We have the 2 citywide races combined on the stage right now. On the left, we have the candidates running for position 8. On the right are the candidates running for position 9. You will be able to vote for 1 candidate for each position, so that's 2 people you'd be able to vote for on stage right now. So again, we have a tight program tonight with a lot of people we'd like to hear from. We have a packed stage right now, which is pretty exciting. We have just 1 minute for each candidate to answer questions. We will also have a lightning round where candidates will have a series of yes or no questions, and you have your paddles there ready. We'll be keeping strictly to the time limit to make sure that all of you are able to answer all of the questions we have for you. To the candidates, you'll have a warning at 15 seconds. The warning will look like the 15-second warning, looks like that right there. And I just surprised him with that, that was my fault. And a red time's up sign, that is right there. So if you continue speaking after that, I will have to cut you off so we can respect your fellow council member candidates. Again, we love excitement from the audience, but ask that you do give any feedback that you have silently. Respectful hand gestures are fine if you want to show support or even your dismay, but please do so silently. Thumbs up, thumbs down, those are fine, but we want to be respectful to our candidates on stage as well as people watching the live stream so they can hear what is going on. The questions tonight were submitted by sponsoring organizations and audience members on the event registration form, so we have a mix there. We will begin with lightning round questions if you all have your yes or no paddles ready. Excellent. So to start, do you own your own home? We have Dionne Foster, Mia Jacobson, and Sarah Nelson saying yes, and Connor Nash, Alexis Mercedes Rinck, Ray Rogers, and Rachael Savage saying no. Do you own rental property in Seattle? Everybody says no. Do you own property outside of Seattle? Everybody says no except for Mia Jacobson and Sarah Nelson. If your campaign staff seeks to unionize, will you voluntarily recognize their effort? Everybody says yes. Oops, and I'm going to be diligent on pausing a little bit after I say the questions to make sure our interpreter has a chance to get everything out. Thank you. Are you participating in Seattle's Democracy Voucher program? We have Dionne Foster, Alexis Mercedes Rinck, and Rachael Savage saying yes, with the remainder of the candidates saying no. Okay, I'm going to say a mode of transportation. I'm asking which is your personal primary mode of transportation. If this is yours, raise your paddle with a yes. Is car your primary personal mode of transportation? We have Dionne Foster, Mia Jacobson, Sarah Nelson, and Ray Rogers saying yes. Bus or train? We have Alexis Mercedes Rinck and Rachael Savage saying yes. Bike or anything with wheels, including skateboards? No one, that was just unique to Adonis. And walking.
Oh, I gotta change my answer.
We have Connor Nash, Alexis Mercedes Rinck, and Rachael Savage look like they're changing their answers to yes for walking. Do you support changing the city's ethics code so that council members may vote on legislation even when they have a conflict of interest? Everybody says no, with the exception of Rachael Savage, who says yes. And I'm just going to remind people, please keep your reactions silent so that everyone can hear. We're respectful to these members up here. Hand gestures, while respectful, are fine. Do you believe more needs to be done to make transit safer in Seattle? Everybody says yes. Do you believe transit in Seattle is unsafe? We've got a waffle with Sarah Nelson. We've got everybody saying, well,
I'm gonna walk.
okay, we've got Connor and Sarah waffling. We've got Rachael, Ray, Dionne and Mia saying yes, and we've got Alexis Mercedes Rinck saying no. Do you support adding more bus-only lanes to keep major bus lines fast and reliable? We have everybody saying yes. Do you support building more protected bike lanes to complete a safe bike network? We have everybody saying yes. Only one light rail station has public restroom facilities. Should restroom facilities be added to additional stations? Everybody says yes. Would you support the implementation of congestion pricing to manage congestion in Seattle? We've got Rachael, Ray, Alexis, and Connor Nash saying yes. We had Sarah Nelson waffle before saying yes. We've got Dionne Foster waffling and Mia Jacobson saying no. Should Seattle invest more in building new sidewalks than is currently allotted? We've got everybody saying yes. Do you support connecting the city's 2 streetcar lines via a center city extension on First Avenue? We have everybody saying yes, except for Sarah Nelson, who says no. Do you support advancing the project to build a lid over I-5 in downtown Seattle to create space for parks and housing? We have everybody saying yes. Do you believe that building more housing is necessary to make housing more affordable? We have everybody saying yes. Do you believe housing developers should be required to include a certain percentage of housing units should be required to include a certain percentage of affordable housing units in development? We've got most candidates saying yes, with Sarah Nelson and Ray Rogers saying no. Should Seattle modify tenant protections in response to landlord concerns? Should Seattle modify tenant protections in response to landlord concerns? We have Dionne Foster, Mia Jacobson, Connor Nash, and Alexis Mercedes Rinck saying no. Sarah Nelson and Ray Rogers saying yes, and Rachael Savage waffling. Should Seattle strengthen tenant protections? Should Seattle strengthen tenant protections? We have Dionne, Mia, Connor, Sarah, not Sarah, sorry. We have Dionne, Mia, Connor, Alexis, Ray, and Rachael saying yes, and Sarah Nelson waffling. In Mayor Harrell's proposed One Seattle comprehensive plan, are there too many neighborhood centers? We have everybody saying no. Do you support allowing small apartment buildings and condos in addition to townhomes in single-family or neighborhood residential zones? We have everybody saying yes, except for Mia Jacobson, who is waffling. Do you support height bonuses for small apartment buildings or stacked flats? We have everyone saying yes, except for Mia Jacobson. Mid-rise apartment zoning is where nearly all opportunities for accessible and affordable housing exist. Should Seattle add more apartment zoning than currently proposed in the comprehensive plan? We have everyone saying yes. Do you believe more revenue is necessary to fund Seattle's transportation and housing needs? We have almost all candidates saying yes, with Rachael Savage not answering. Do you believe Seattle needs to reduce spending on transportation and housing and lessen the scope of planned projects? We have everyone saying no. Mayor Harrell convened a revenue stabilization work group to identify equitable revenue options for Seattle. I'm going to list the 6 revenue sources they identified, and you're going to answer whether you support enacting that option. If you say yes to multiple answers, that doesn't mean you're in favor of enacting all of them together, just that each one you do say is worth enacting individually. All right, so first one, expanding the Jumpstart payroll expense tax. We have most of the candidates saying yes, with Sarah Nelson and Rachael Savage saying no. A city-level capital gains tax, which would tax long-term capital gains above a certain threshold. We have most candidates saying yes, Rachael Savage saying no, Sarah Nelson waffling. A high CEO pay ratio tax, which would be a local tax on businesses that have a high ratio of CEO pay to their median worker compensation. We have most candidates saying yes, with Sarah Nelson, Ray Rogers, and Rachael Savage saying no. A vacancy tax, which would tax vacant residential or commercial units. We have almost all candidates saying yes, with Sarah Nelson waffling. A progressive real estate excise tax, which would add an additional tax increment on sales of property over a certain price. We have most candidates saying yes, with Sarah Nelson and Rachael Savage saying no. An estate tax levied on the estate based on total assets after allowable expenses and debts have been paid. Most candidates saying yes, with Sarah Nelson, Ray Rogers, and Rachael Savage saying no. An inheritance tax, similar to an estate tax, except that the taxes are paid by the beneficiary of a bequest as it's valued at the time of death. We have Dionne Foster, Connor Nash, Alexis Mercedes Rinck saying yes, Mia Jacobson waffling, and Sarah Nelson, Ray Rogers, and Rachael Savage saying no. Will you vote to reauthorize the democracy voucher program in the August election? We've got everybody saying yes. In February, this past February, for the social housing vote, did you vote for option 1A, which implemented a 5% tax on salaries over $1 million to fund the Seattle social housing developer option? Did you vote for option 1A? We have Dionne Foster, Connor Nash, Alexis Mercedes Rinck, who said yes, Sarah Nelson saying no, and we've got other people abstaining on what they voted on. Mia Jacobson, Ray Rogers, and Rachael Savage did not answer. Did you vote for option 1B? Sarah Nelson says yes, she voted for 1B. Dionne Foster, Connor Nash, and Alexis Mercedes Rinck said no, with Mia Jacobson, Ray Rogers, and Rachael Savage abstaining. In 2024, did you vote to approve the Seattle Transportation Levy? We have almost all candidates saying yes, with Mia Jacobson not answering. In 2024, did you vote for Kamala Harris for president? We have almost all saying yes, with Rachael Savage and Connor Nash saying no, Mia Jacobson not answering. In 2024, did you vote for Trump for president? We have almost all candidates saying no, with Rachael Savage saying yes, and Mia Jacobson not answering. In 2024, did you vote for Bob Ferguson for governor? We have almost all candidates saying yes, with Connor Nash and Rachael Savage saying no, and Mia Jacobson not answering. In 2024, did you vote for Dave Reichert for governor? We have Rachael Savage saying yes. We've got Ray Rogers, Alexis Mercedes Rinck, Sarah Nelson, Connor Nash, and Dionne Foster saying no, with Mia Jacobson not answering. In 2021, did you vote for Bruce Harrell for mayor? We have Dionne Foster, Connor Nash, and Alexis Mercedes Rinck saying no, Sarah Nelson, Ray Rogers, and Rachael Savage saying yes, and Mia Jacobson not answering. In 2021, did you vote for Lorena Gonzalez for mayor? We have Dionne Foster, Alexis Mercedes Rinck saying yes, Connor Nash, Sarah Nelson, Ray Rogers, and Rachael Savage saying no, with Mia Jacobson not answering. And that is the conclusion of this lightning round. Thank you very much. So now we will go into the short answer questions, starting with Dionne Foster. A reminder that there is a 1-minute time allotment for answering questions. What are your top transportation priorities? Starting with Dionne.
Thank you. For me, transportation is about making sure that we make it reliable, affordable, and accessible, and those are going to be as well as safe. I think about making sure that we have safe connections to transportation. That means making investments in sidewalks and street calming so that people can get from their home, their place of work, their childcare to the bus station. It means that we need to continue with affordability, our investments that are making sure that, you know, the youth orca passes are in place, our investments that are making sure that we have the transit passes for folks who are at Seattle Housing Authority. Those are huge priorities. And then making sure that people feel safe waiting for the bus, riding the bus, and that our transit operators feel safe. And then we want to continue to invest in reliability. Seattle has bought down a lot of service from King County Metro with the Seattle Transportation Measure, and we want to continue to do that so we can work on our efficiency and our reliability.
Thank you. Mia?
Hi. My biggest issue for transportation would be to create a policy-making process that relies on the contribution of everyone who uses the transportation system. I'm running for council to kind of bring attention to the fact that our society has dramatically changed in the last 20 years. The rate of technology has fundamentally changed the way we use information, the way we talk to people. We can coordinate online in huge groups. We can use data scrapes with data analytics to figure out exactly what the people think and what our issues are, and we can have a more participatory process. As it stands, our local policymaking process is completely inaccessible by the citizenry, so that means that if you have an issue, if you have a solution, and you're not on council or on the committee or invited specifically to speak on that issue, your information is never part of it, and I think that we've evolved out of that process.
Thank you. Connor?
I would say my #1 concern is safety, especially on our roads. As someone who walks nearly everywhere and sometimes scoots, but mostly walks, I just feel unsafe being on the sidewalk. And so I want to have more protected bike lanes. I want to have safer sidewalks. I want more street trees. I kind of want to make cars a little bit uncomfortable to go fast. Because when they feel uncomfortable to go fast, that means our pedestrians and our bikes are safer. And I would say my second priority would be to make transit far more accessible, and that does mean making it free. And I really do want our buses, our light rails to be free for everybody to use. I don't think that you should have to pay to do it, because you already pay for it in your taxes, as we heard from our past panel, that it is paid through from sales tax and all of our taxes. It should be free for all of us to use. Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah?
My top priority is transit safety, first and foremost. I am proud to be endorsed by ATU 587, and I believe it's partly because I put safety first and foremost, because this is an area that Seattle city government, local government can actually control. And that means ensuring that what good does, we can have all the buses and all the light rails we can invest in and afford, and even that we can't afford. My point is that if people do not feel safe getting on a train or a bus, going to work, going to see a friend, going to school, circulating throughout the city, it does us no good to have that transit. And so my responsibility as a city council member is to ensure that people is to improve public safety, and that starts with our with transit. There were 14,000 safety and security incidents in 2023 to Q1 2025 on light rail, and 5,400 on Metro.
That is time. Thank you. Alexis?
Thank you. Happy Pride, everybody. So as someone who is car-free by choice, I recognize how deeply important having an expansive transit system is. And I'm car-free by choice. That wasn't always a choice. And I know I represent 20% of Seattle households that also live car-free. So making sure that we are maintaining and keeping a safe transit system is incredibly important, but also looking at investments that prioritize walking, rolling, and taking transit as we are moving forward. Particularly when we're looking at areas that have been deprived of such investments, such as much of South Seattle. And paired with that, I want to make sure that we're keeping projects online, key capital projects online that are currently under threat because of federal budget cuts. So making sure we're making progress on Rapid Ride J is tremendously important to me. Making these investments means that we can encourage more folks to get out of cars and get onto transit. And lastly, making sure we have safety on transit for drivers and passengers, and making progress on Vision Zero.
And that is time. Thank you. Ray?
Safety. As Sarah said, there are many contributing things that we could add to public transportation, but nothing supersedes safety. Talking to a person as a young teen who traveled Metro from out of gang-ridden parts of the neighborhood, as we see struggling to the day with the youth now. And if I could see, it's more connectivity, transportation, connecting, allowing opportunities for youth to come from out of some of these areas where it's hard hit with gang violence and many other things, drug addiction, the selling of narcotics. And so transportation, although it's critical, we need to make sure that we're providing such so that youth can come from one part of the city to the next. We're noticing that it's taken too long for them to be able to get from one part of the city to the next.
Thank you. Rachael?
Thank you. So for me, it's safety. That is the most important thing for both of our buses and our light rails. And I want to see our light rail and buses safe. I want to see them clean, and I want to see them welcoming. I love what Sound Transit put together, the plan to man, or rather to put fare gates on our light rail platforms, and I want to take it a step further and propose we man those fare gates. We can increase public safety if we do that. If we have people at the fare gates, they can see right away if someone's having a mental health issue, they can call the care team. If someone's intoxicated, they can call SBD. If someone is experiencing a health crisis, they can call the fire department. And that will increase our safety day one if we implement that plan. And I think it's practical, I think it's fair, and I think it's compassionate.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, I see that we have a number of people standing in the back. There are some open seats here in the front. If there's an open seat next to you, can you raise your hand? If anyone wants to have a seat, you can just come and fill in to someone with their hand raised. We will move on to the next question. This time we'll start with Mia. The question, what is the top housing policy you would seek to change in the proposed One Seattle comprehensive plan?
So, it is wildly illogical to expect me as one person to speak for 775,000 people in 2025. We have AI that is fundamentally transforming our economy in this generation, and there's no space for us to talk about it. We cannot talk to our local representatives. They're not legally required to respond to questions, and every time you guys experience an issue, you no longer have to just vote for someone. We have the technology now to actually have that conversation outside of conventional work hours, and I think it's unreasonable to expect 9 people to figure out all these complex issues that we have a citizenry that experiences them every day, and not have them be part of the process, so we can begin to figure out how we want to address the housing issues that we face.
Connor?
I think a sad feature of Seattle is that we have these islands of density and in the sea of low density, and we need more housing. We need those islands to be throughout the whole city, because if we just keep it in these pockets, it harms places like where I live in Little Saigon, because I have seen so many apartment buildings come up in my neighborhood that it's not even, it's getting destroyed, it's getting gentrified out. But then all these other places on the lake, they don't get touched, and they get to keep all of their houses, and their neighborhoods get to look like how they want it to look like. But my neighborhood is just getting destroyed slowly through the gentrification process. So it needs to be equitable everywhere. And so I don't think the One Seattle plan goes nearly far enough, because it harms places like the Chinatown International District, where all the buildings will go up in, and it won't even look like an international district anymore. It's just gonna look like some regular old neighborhood you can find anywhere. And I think that's a major problem.
Thank you. Sarah?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What's the top housing policy you'd seek to change in the proposed One Seattle comprehensive plan?
First, I'll say that just today we got, I would have to, so today Mayor Harrell sent down the permanent legislation to comply with HB 1110. So I have yet to read this and figure out what kinds of what I'd like to change here. I can say first and foremost that we do need to increase the FAR limits for the floor area ratio limits for stacked flats. Clearly, if we want more of that, that would be from 1.4 to perhaps 1.8, maybe even 2. This will allow for bigger units. I'm talking about the missing middle. This would allow for bigger units, and also for that would allow for more families throughout those zones. As far as all the neighborhood centers in all parts of the city, I also have to confer with my colleagues that represent districts, but I'm all for, I have no intention of eliminating the neighborhood centers, and it's just a question of listening to the organizations and the residents and finding out what kinds of changes need to be made to those.
Thank you. Alexis?
Thank you. With that, the comprehensive plan represents one of the best promises and steps that we can take towards addressing the housing affordability crisis. We want to create more housing opportunity in these high opportunity neighborhoods. This plan represents an opportunity for us to also remedy the racist land use policies of our past. And so by pushing for a plan that expands our neighborhood centers, by pushing for a plan that expands the number of neighborhood centers, particularly in areas that have historically not seen growth, and opening up housing opportunity for working people in neighborhoods across the city is huge. And this plan represents an opportunity to do just that. Paired with that, we can also find ways in the comp plan to incentivize and support development of more middle housing across the city. And that's certainly something that we're going to be pushing towards. That's why I also put forward an amendment to our interim legislation to put forward a plan and put forward a report to study more opportunities to make stacked flats possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ray?
Hi, I definitely am a product of affordable housing. My personal experience, affordable housing, making it accessible for everyone. There's been great strides as it relates to being able to provide housing. And as a person who's a product of it, I would like to see and continue building for community centers, other programs surrounded in the community, There's much discussion that needs to be had. I have been on the fence about it, but I'm open to both sides. Let's hear from the community. What is it that community also thinks is needed? And thereby I'll make my decision.
Thank you. Rachael?
Thank you. Well, I am all about density. I want to build, baby, build. I want our city of Seattle to be the New York of the West Coast. We need density downtown. We need to build everywhere we can. And I think when we increase the demand, that housing costs will go down. I also think we need to right away fill in the gap of our working people. They can't afford the rent. I just see the rent go up, up, up in the years that I've lived in Seattle, and I don't see the wages going up fast enough. So I'm going to propose on City Council that we fill the gap for working people. For people making minimum wage, we can subsidize their rent on studio apartments, and everyone can get housed and quickly. The last thing I'll say is I'm against the housing first policy. I think we need to move to a treatment first policy to help drug addicts, our fentanyl epidemic. They can get better if we stop enabling them as a city.
Thank you. Dionne?
Great, thank you. So while I will say I was really disappointed that the comprehensive plan was not passed on time this year, I'm really excited about the opportunity to work on it next year because it is a huge opportunity for us to deliver for folks around the city. I think the most important thing that we can do is to expand our neighborhood centers, particularly in areas that have low risk of displacement and high opportunity. I live in Rainier Beach in District 2. We've had a lot of growth and density in our district, and I'm happy to have apartments in my neighborhood. I love that. I want people to be able to live everywhere around the city. I want families like mine to be able to live in apartments in my community. I want them to live in apartments up north. I want them to be able to live in West Seattle, and I think that's important for us to deliver on when we look at this comprehensive plan. That's also the only way that we're going to get to true affordability. We need to be working on both abundance, ensuring that we are building enough affordable housing, and also ensuring that we're continuing to invest in deep affordability. My son lives half-time with me and half-time in a subsidized artist apartment next to transit with his dad, and we need more of both of those kinds of housing opportunities.
Thank you. Now we're going to start with Connor. Question is, the Seattle Transit Measure is up for renewal. The measure purchases $50 million worth of transit service from Metro every year. How would you like to see those funds invested?
I think first I would want to see more buses, more light rail happening. We just need more of it happening everywhere so that people can be using the services, the transit. And then going back to just it needs to be free. We need to work towards it being free orca passes so that anybody can use these transit systems. I do agree with some of my opponent, well, my one opponent, that safety is a priority on there, but I just don't, if no one can afford it, if it just seems like not being used there, like safety is an issue, but we need to make it free. And so those would be my two priorities that I would have with it.
Thank you. Sarah?
I've already touched on safety, so I'll say service and reliability. And everybody says that because that's what is supposed to be achieved, but what that really means is ensuring that there are more frequent buses going on certain lines of certain metro lines, and for that, every time they propose every time that this measure is renewed, what they do is they do an equity analysis, and they look at the usage of existing routes and who's going where, and are our neighbors in the most marginalized areas, both by income and by existing bus service, and they combine those for a formula for where those additional service hours should be, and that is an approach that I support, and I'm gonna hope that they produce a robust analysis.
Thank you. Alexis?
This was mentioned earlier, but currently the Seattle Transit Measure is funded with a sales tax, so finding a way to make the tax more progressive, if possible, is something that we certainly want to explore. But I also want to look at where there's opportunities to partner again with the county in doing something together in terms of moving forward with the transit measure. Historically, we were in a place where we were once together, and now we split into a system where there's 2 tiers of service. Whereas once you leave the city of Seattle, your level of bus service and frequency is a lot less. And as the city of Seattle has become more unaffordable, we pushed working folks out of the city, and thus subsequently, they've been driven to, if they're still working within the city of Seattle, they're having to commute in using a car. And so by being able to have this conversation with the county and move forward together so we can actually expand reliable service countywide is a great way that we can make sure that working people are able to remain within the city and also doing our part as a region. Thank you.
Thank you. Ray?
My 2 would be accessibility, 1, and service reliability. In my experience as transportation, what I notice is we have that many that are perhaps visually impaired, and so there's not enough braille for those who see with their hands. If you've ever rode the bus, you don't see a lot of braille on any of the buses. We're able to meet the needs physically for those who are able to hear, but what about those who use their hands to be able to move around? And so I would definitely like to see more accessibility to meet the needs of everyone, not just those who are physically impaired, but those who are visually impaired.
Thank you. Rachael?
I'm concerned with the city of Seattle. We have different needs in the city. We have density, we have lots of people, and we need our buses to be safe and clean. So I would propose with more money to have a Seattle Police Department task force, transit force, so we can keep people safe on our transit. I want to see kids riding the bus. I want to see elderly riding the bus. I want everyone to be safe, not just those of us who are able-bodied. How many of you feel totally safe on King County Metro? Well, I'm glad for you, but how about your grandma? How about your kid? How about the disabled? So I think we need our police department present on our buses, not just to protect our riders, but to protect our bus drivers. We need no more senseless violence or deaths on our watch, not on my watch when I'm on city council. Bringing safety back, bringing dignity back to our beautiful city.
Thank you. Dionne?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. The Seattle Transit Measure is up for renewal. The measure purchases $50 million worth of transit service from Metro every year. How would you like to see those funds invested?
Thanks. Yeah, so this one's really important to me. When I worked at Seattle Foundation, we invested significantly in the last effort to pass the Seattle Transportation Measure, exactly because it provides this expanded service for reliability in our transit network. And so for me, that is incredibly important. I live on the 7, I take the 7, and I take the light rail and I drive, and I think it's important that we are investing in a couple of things. Transit connections. When I'm out and I'm talking to folks who've been pushed out of the city, there's so many people who are relying on transit coming from one bus to another, and we need to make sure we're investing in that service. And that service has to be frequent and it has to be reliable. And I think it's important that we're prioritizing equity within that when we're thinking about the lines that have really high ridership rates, and particularly the lines that have high ridership rates amongst folks who are primary transit users or transit reliant, folks who are connecting to critical services. So that's going to be my focus with the expansion, or with the renewal rather.
Thank you. Mia?
These are all great ideas, and oftentimes if you're choosing to run for council, it's because you are very informed on a particular issue. Unfortunately, it is impossible to be informed on enough issues to adequately address the complexities that we're facing. I would love to know what the bus drivers have to think about the investment, the riders. There's just no reason not to invite everyone who experiences that issue into the conversation. This is not an abstract concept. There are very simple policies that can be put into place. Digital online public forum, an interactive map where citizens can drop pins of interest with solutions and issues. And this is just a transitional support suggestion. I'm not saying defund the government, right? I'm just saying we need to update our process and the way that we interact with information to reflect the times.
Thank you very much. We are almost at time. I'm gonna push it a little bit. I'm gonna ask you for super fast questions, super fast answers, because this is a really important issue too. Seattle is missing 11,000 blocks of sidewalks. How should the city fund construction of new sidewalks, starting with Sarah?
Well, we just passed the largest transportation levy ever, $1.7 billion worth of levy, and part of that will be spent on new sidewalks and part on maintenance. And so before I talk about let's have new money, although I would be open to that, we have to look at what's the plan for the existing investment. And I want to make sure that there is a lot of that money going toward fixing our existing sidewalks, because why? Those serve already built out neighborhoods, and they are, so we're not talking about single family home neighborhoods out in the north and south, we're talking about in city that people, especially people who rely on wheels to get to their transit service are I hear the most from them. And so here's what I would say to that answer. How to get more sidewalks, we need to make sure that we are adequately and responsibly spending the resources that we just passed now for more sidewalks.
That's time. Thank you so much. Alexis?
Could you repeat the question?
Yep. Seattle is missing 11,000 blocks of sidewalks. How should the city fund the construction of new sidewalks? And if you want to be really fast, you can.
Just for you, Crystal. Progressive revenue. We currently fund a lot of our sidewalk projects that are upcoming. Now that we've passed the transportation levy, this is a property tax levy, not the most progressive revenue source. But as we're also looking ahead towards more infrastructure projects, we should be looking at more progressive revenue sources to be funding these things. Again, Washington State has the second most progressive tax code in the country. Working people pay disproportionately more of their take home into our tax system than the ultra wealthy do. And so really any of our work moving forward as a city, we have to be looking at more progressive ways to be funding these services, because the ultra wealthy should pay what they owe. And we need these services to have the city that I think we all want to live in, that has sidewalks, so people don't have to walk in the middle of the street and potentially threaten their lives. So, progressive revenue.
Thank you. Ray?
As like we've already heard, there's already been a levy that was just passed. Once again, $1.7 billion. I've been looking at this young lady in the wheelchair. Her shirt says, should more sidewalks and bike lanes. We have existing sidewalks that are broken. We gotta fix those first. There is funding that we have right now. As much as I would like to think about later and tomorrow, there's stuff that needs to be done right now. And there is money that is allocated so that we can fix what is broken now. Not tomorrow, not necessarily when I get in office, but what needs to be done now. If so happened I was to attain office, I would fix those when I got it. But as of now, there is a levy that just been passed. You heard our president say $1.7 billion. We need to fix what's broken now.
Thank you. Rachael?
Thank you. I just want to say that I am all for sidewalks. Walking is my main mode of transportation, and I hope it is for more people. I don't want to tax any more people in the city of Seattle. I would like to see us be more responsible with the money that we have. And the other thing I'll say quickly is, I also, as a city council member, I would be looking to see where I can work with the federal government and MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. That includes sidewalks. We could get funding for sidewalks so people can walk and exercise if we cooperate with the federal government rather than spending our time, our money, our resources, our energy fighting. Let's see where we can work with and what's going right and how we can collaborate to really work for the citizens of Seattle rather than fight.
Thank you. Dionne?
Okay, so I think that what's in the Seattle Transportation Levy is a great start. I think it's really important that we have more resources that are going to sidewalks. Excuse me, I live on a street that does not have a complete sidewalk. I cannot get to the end of my street without walking in the road. I see neighbors who are elderly who are going in the street to get down the end of the street. I see neighbors who are in chairs who are going in the street to get to the end of the street, and I think we need to do better. At the rate that we're going right now, it would take us hundreds of years to complete our sidewalk infrastructure, even with the additional investments. So we have to do better. I have experience working on progressive revenue. I support it at the state level. We defended it at the state level. I think it's important that we continue to look for more investment so that we can get it done and ensure that people are able to get around safely. I also think it's important that we make sure that we are maintaining our sidewalks and making sure that they are safe places for people to traverse when the sidewalk infrastructure is there.
Thank you. Mia?
I have so much respect for everyone running for council. I just want to make it very clear that once an individual is elected, it doesn't matter what the citizenry thinks. There is no systemic way to hold elected officials accountable, which worked for a very long time, but we don't have to do that anymore. It doesn't make sense to allow such a small group of people, such a small data pool to make decisions for so many, when we're living at a time when we can access this conversation. If you look at your social media groups, the community is already doing this. We're already taking it upon ourselves to figure out how to fix the issues that we face. There must be a bridge into the local legislative process. The policies that I'm proposing can be introduced by any candidate, but they must be done if we are going to be able to guide our government in a dexterous way to respond to the issues that we continue to face.
And Connor, you have the last word.
Thank you. So I'll make the answer to your question really quick. The levy is the start. We need progressive revenue, and we need to build sidewalks, especially in places that don't have the sidewalks on there. But I want to take a brief second to talk about an answer that one of my opponents said when Sarah said that she wants to listen to the people. And if you go to a council meeting, that is not what's happening. We not keep seeing the council listening to people. We see them dismissing them. I've been called disruptive because I've told them that their terrible bills are terrible. And I want to say that her answer on the sidewalks question really says a lot about her campaign, because she wants to maintain sidewalks, especially in places that are wealthy that already have the sidewalks, and she doesn't want to listen to people who do not have sidewalks because they aren't as wealthy and they're not donating to her campaign on there. Yeah, I think that's the answer to your question, and a little bit of a soapbox as well.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to all of these candidates: Dionne Foster, Mia Jacobson, Connor Nash, Sarah Nelson, Alexis Mercedes Rinck, Ray Rogers, and Rachael. Thank you so much. And now we will take a short 10-minute break and start right up again at 7. reminder that there are near the front, if you don't want to stand in the back. If there's a seat open next to you, raise your hand so people can see where available seats are. We have some people coming up now. See remaining people straggling in. There's a seat open next to you. Raise your hand. All right. We are getting ready to get back to it with Seattle's mayoral candidates. A reminder, we have an ASL interpreter right up here on the left front of the stage. 2 interpreters actually, doing a fabulous job. I think we're all settled in here. All right, so this is our final panel. We have the candidates for mayor tonight: Ry Armstrong, Clinton Bliss, Mayor Bruce Harrell, Joe Mallahan, Joe Malloy, Isaiah Willoughby, and Katie Wilson. Thank you all. So the mayor is the head of the executive branch of our government, and they are responsible for enforcing laws, managing city departments, spending the city budget, and they also have a lot of power in setting the big picture goals and directions for Seattle. Again, just a reminder, we have a very tight program tonight with a lot of candidates that we need to hear from. So candidates, you'll have just 1 minute to answer questions. We will begin with the lightning round, where candidates will answer a series of yes/no questions. Your paddles are right up there, so you can get them ready. We'll be keeping strictly to the time limit to make sure that we're able to hear all of the candidates and they have time to speak. To the candidates, you will have a warning at 15 seconds in yellow, that is right there in the front, and a red time's up sign. At that point, I will be cutting candidates off to move on to the next one, so don't make me do it for you. You guys can do it yourself. We love excitement from the audience, but ask that you do so silently so as not to disrupt the live stream or delay the program. If you want to show support, you can do so with thumbs up, thumbs down, respectful hand gestures. The questions tonight were submitted by the sponsoring organizations as well as audience members on the registration form. So we're going to get right into it with the lightning round tonight. If the candidates have your yes and no paddles ready, we will get started with these quick questions, beginning with, do you own your own home? We have almost all of the candidates saying yes, with Joe Malloy, Katie Wilson, and Isaiah Willoughby saying no. Do you own rental property in Seattle? All candidates are saying no. Do you own property outside of Seattle? We have almost all candidates saying no, except for Clinton Bliss and Bruce Harrell. If your campaign staff seeks to unionize, will you voluntarily recognize their effort? We have all candidates saying yes. Are you participating in Seattle's Democracy Voucher Program? We have all candidates saying yes. Which of the following is your personal primary mode of transportation? Is car, are you traveling by car primarily? We have Clinton Bliss, Bruce Harrell, Joe Mallahan saying yes. Bus or train? We have Joe Malloy, Isaiah Willoughby, Katie Wilson, and Ry Armstrong saying yes. Bike or skateboard or anything with wheels? That was relevant earlier, surprisingly. All right, or walking? We have Joe Mallahan, Katie Wilson, and Isaiah Willoughby saying, okay, yes. Do you support changing the city's ethics code so that council members may vote on legislation even when they have a conflict of interest? We have no's across the board with an eventual no from Clinton Bliss. Do you believe more needs to be done to make transit safer in Seattle? We have everybody saying yes. Do you believe transit in Seattle is unsafe? We have Rye Armstrong, Clinton Bliss, Bruce Harrell, and Joe Mallahan saying yes, with Joe Malloy, Isaiah Willoughby, and Katie Wilson saying no. Do you support adding more bus-only lanes to keep major bus lines fast and reliable? We have everybody saying yes. Do you support building more protected bike lanes to complete a safe bike network? Everybody says yes. Only one light rail station has public restroom facilities. Should restroom facilities be added to additional stations? We have everybody saying yes. Should Seattle invest more in building new sidewalks than is currently allotted? We have everyone saying yes.
I abstain.
My apology, Joe Mallahan abstained. Do you support connecting the city's 2 streetcar lines via a city center extension on First Avenue? We have most candidates saying yes and Clinton Bliss saying no. Do you support advancing the project to build a lid over I-5 in downtown Seattle to create space for parks and housing? We've got an eventual yes from Mayor Bruce Harrell and yeses from everybody else. Do you believe that building more housing is necessary to make housing more affordable? Most candidates saying yes, with Joe Malloy saying no. Do you believe housing developers should be required to include a certain percentage of affordable housing units in developments? We have Katie Wilson waffling, with the remainder of the candidates saying yes. Should Seattle modify tenant protections in response to landlord concerns? We have Joe Mallahan and Bruce Harrell saying yes, Clinton Bliss abstaining, with the remainder of the candidates saying no. Should Seattle strengthen tenant protections? We have got yeses from everyone but Clinton Bliss, who says no. In Mayor Harrell's proposed One Seattle comprehensive plan, are there too many neighborhood centers? I know what one person's answer is going to be. We have got most candidates saying no, with the exception of Joe Mallahan, who does not answer. Do you support allowing small apartment buildings and condos in addition to townhomes in single family and or neighborhood residential zones? We have got most candidates saying yes, except for Clinton Bliss, who says no. Do you support height bonuses for small apartment buildings or stacked flats? We have everybody saying yes. Jackson Park is a fenced-off golf course next door to 2 light rail stations. Should Seattle pursue exploring other uses for this public space? Jackson Park. Everybody says yes. Mid-rise apartment zoning is where nearly all opportunities for accessible and affordable housing exist. Should Seattle add more apartment zoning than currently proposed in the comprehensive plan? We have Rye Armstrong, Clinton Bliss, Joe Malloy, Isaiah Willoughby, and Katie Wilson saying yes, Bruce Harrell saying no, and Joe Mallahan not answering. Joe? Do you believe more revenue is necessary to fund Seattle's transportation and housing needs?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
Sure. Do you believe more revenue is necessary to fund Seattle's transportation and housing needs? We have yeses across the board. Do you believe Seattle needs to reduce spending on transportation and housing and lessen the scope of planned projects? We have no from almost every candidate except for Clinton Bliss, who waffled and then put his paddle down. Mayor Harrell convened a revenue stabilization work group to identify equitable revenue options for Seattle. I'm gonna list the 6 revenue sources they identified, and you're gonna answer whether you support enacting that option. If you say yes to multiple answers, that does not mean you're in favor of enacting them all together, just that each one you do say yes to is worth doing individually.
There were 9.
Well, I started by saying 6, but we have 7 on the list.
There were 9 recommendations.
I believe you. We have. I absolutely trust your evaluation of that. The first, expanding the Jumpstart payroll expense tax. We have got almost everybody saying yes, except for Bruce Harrell and Isaiah Willoughby. The city level capital gains tax, which would tax long-term capital gains above a certain threshold. We have almost everybody saying yes, except for Isaiah Willoughby saying no. High CEO pay ratio tax, which would tax businesses that have a high ratio of CEO pay to median worker compensation.
Could you say that one more time?
Yep. It's a high CEO pay ratio tax, and that would tax local businesses that have a high ratio of CEO pay to median worker compensation. So we have we now have everyone saying yes, with Bruce Harrell joining everybody. A vacancy tax, which would tax vacant residential and or commercial units. We've got a reluctant yes, evidently, from Joe Mallahan, a no from Clinton Bliss, and do I see yeses from everyone else? Yes. A progressive real estate excise tax, which would add an additional tax increment on sales of property over a certain price. We have everybody saying yes. An estate tax levied on the estate based on total assets after allowable expenses and debts have been paid. We have a yes from most candidates, but a no from Joe Mallahan and Isaiah Willoughby. And an inheritance tax, similar to an estate tax, except the taxes are paid by the beneficiary of a bequest, as it is valued at the time of death. We have got yeses from most, no answer from Joe Mallahan, and a no from Isaiah Willoughby. All right. Will you be voting to reauthorize the democracy voucher program in the August election? We have almost everybody saying yes, except for Clinton Bliss. In February, for the social housing vote, did you vote for option 1A, which proposed a 5% tax on salaries over $1 million to fund Seattle's social housing developer? We've got yeses from Katie Wilson, Isaiah Willoughby, Joe Malloy.
Actually, for the first time in 15 years, I missed that vote. I called out of town and didn't get back in time to vote.
He didn't vote at all for anything in that
First
election.
time in 15 years, Crystal.
Rye Armstrong also voted yes. And Clinton did
I don't recall, honestly, I'd have to read through it.
Clinton does not know. Okay, who voted for option 1B, which proposed using existing payroll taxes to fund the social housing developer? Bruce Harrell voted for option 1B with no one else voting yes. We've got no's from almost everyone but Clinton Bliss, who does not remember and Joe Malahan, who did not vote.
They would not have voted for us.
I said your yes, I think.
Okay, we go yes.
In 2024, did you vote to approve the Seattle Transportation Levy? Okay, we've got almost everybody saying. Okay, Clinton is holding up his thing, but I think I just heard him say, I don't remember. Okay. So we've almost got yeses. In 2024, did you vote for Kamala Harris for president? We have got yeses from everyone except for Joe Malloy and Isaiah Willoughby. In 2024, did you vote for Donald Trump for president? We have no's from almost everybody except for Isaiah Willoughby. In 2024, did you vote for Bob Ferguson for governor? We have everybody, almost, except for Clinton, who does not remember evidently. You know, we have now identified a Trump Bob Ferguson voter. There one is, right there. In 2024, did you vote for Dave Reichert for governor? We have almost everyone saying no, except for Clinton Bliss. In 2021, did you vote for Bruce Harrell for mayor? We have got Clinton Bliss, Bruce Harrell, Joe Malahan, and Isaiah Willoughby saying yes, with Katie Wilson, Joe Malloy, and Rye Armstrong saying no. In 2021, did you vote for Lorena Gonzalez for mayor? We have yes from Katie Wilson, Joe Malloy, and Rye Armstrong, and no from everybody else. That actually concludes our lightning round with the candidates for Seattle Mayor. Thank you all. We'll move on to our general short answer questions. So starting off with Rye Armstrong, what are your top transportation priorities?
Check, check. First, anyone too hot in here? Everyone doing okay? Drinking water? That's right, Crystal. I think my top transportation priorities for this election are going to be focusing really on buses. In my experience, I think the experience of a ghost bus or waiting to get somewhere where you need to get there is super frustrating. And then you end up having to pay $7 for a Lime or, God forbid, $40 for an Uber to get to where you need to go to live your life. I think we want to build back trust in community that buses will show up on time, be safe, and get you where you need to be. And that means investing in that bus infrastructure and that technology. So for me, buses are rad, and I want to invest in them. I think that would be a top choice. I also, looking at ST2 and ST3 delays, that is going to, I think, critically harm our city. And so we want to make sure that we are on sound transit to make sure that that's moving forward as much as possible, or finding the progressive revenue to fill in when federal funding eventually gets pulled for those projects, if that does happen.
Thank you. Clinton?
Yes, I think transportation needs to be done in concert with all of our other infrastructure. I think as we grow, we need to think about this all together. Sorry, am I talking close enough?
You're great.
Okay, all right. If I had my way, I think I would put all traffic underground, but I would I feel like I would like to start with our main city corridors and really put traffic underground, I think, and make the city streets so that they are open to foot traffic, pedestrians. And then regarding mass transit, I feel like that needs to be discussed and look at the cost, but I wonder about overhead for that part.
Thank you. Bruce?
You know, I want to, first of all, thank everyone for being here, for participating in democracy. I think the first thing on transportation, we have to just sort of put it in the context of the lens. And the lens I look for is safety. All of the projects have to be safe. The second part of that will be reliability. So if you look at bridge maintenance, for example, in the levy, how much money we put in there, over 34 million per year for bridge maintenance. We have to have a reliable system. And thirdly, connectivity. So when we talk about protected bike lanes, we talk about sidewalks, and you see we put 200 million in there for sidewalks. Everything has to work together. So the lens by which we will approach our transportation needs will be safety, reliability, and connectivity. And we did a pretty stellar job in putting that together. And I have many people, transportation advocates, that have supported us doing this work and helping build that levy, and I want to thank you.
Joe Mellahan.
Forgive me, just to, like you say, en primer lugar, quisiera agradecer al centro por permitir este evento. Roberto Maestas, Bob Santos, Larry Gossett, Bernie Weber nos dieron un ejemplo a todos de cómo lograr la justicia social mediante la acción colectiva. So thank you to El Centro. I think my two biggest issues are safety. And when I talk about safety, I'm primarily talking about bus safety, that people aren't hesitating to ride the bus system because they feel unsafe. And the second thing is facilitating and incentivizing investment in housing in transit centers. So to me, those are my two biggest issues. Sorry about that.
Joe Malloy.
Thank you for the intro music, Joe. And thank you for hosting this. Thank you to everybody for being here. It's a privilege to get to talk on this stage about these sorts of things. Both of the main issues tonight, housing and transportation, to me are issues that need to be framed through a generational lens, right? These are, even though we have short-term problems and needs, we still need to be looking at our solutions through 50 and 100-year timelines, right? Because if we're not creating our solutions for our long-term goals, which for transportation, for housing, these are things that we will probably, everybody in here probably will not see the full development of. But that's where we need to be framing. So of course, safety, reliability, and connectivity are important things. Of course they are. We made regressive steps through COVID. We had free transit here. We need to get back to that. It's 8% of the bus revenue comes from King County Metro's numbers. They say 8%. So
and that is time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Isaiah Willoughby. Thank you for everybody being here, and thank you all of the mayor candidates. And I'm from District 2. I grew up here. I'm from Zion Preparatory Elementary. My mom, when the question is, do we own parcels here? My mom has 3 houses here, so I don't own it, but my mom owns it. Her name is Willoughby. So I'm from Franklin, so we live here. So my vision for transportation is, my vision is Seattle is where every resident, where they walk. Hello. My vision is where every resident, whether they walk, roll, bike, ride, transit, or drive, can move safely, affordably, and reliably. That means expanding our bus, rapid transit, and light rail networks, improving ADA accessibility, and making sidewalks and bike lanes continuous and safe across all neighborhoods. We must prioritize infrastructure in South Seattle and underserved areas that have been historically neglected. Transportation justice is climate justice, racial justice, and economic justice all at once.
Hi everyone, Katie Wilson here, great to be here. So I feel like this is an audience that can handle a little wonkiness, so I'm going to say mode shift. And basically that means that as our region keeps growing, we keep adding people to our city, we cannot keep adding cars. We need to make it efficient, reliable, and safe for people to travel by other modes, by transit, by walking, by biking, by rolling. And so, under this rubric, that's a lot of things. That means improving our public transit system. That means making it more competitive with driving. And frankly, it also means having the data. We actually don't have, at least not published on the city website, any mode shift data since 2019. So we don't know how we're doing. Although I think given the way that vehicle miles traveled and other metrics have been going in the last few years, we're probably not making progress.
Thank you. Now we're going to start with Clinton to answer. What is your plan to increase housing affordability while mitigating displacement?
Well, that's a tough one. I think housing affordability, land costs the same no matter what you do, and building materials cost a lot as well. And so then it comes down to, can we build using the land that we have, and I think building up is the way to go. I think that tying that to our transportation corridors, in my mind, is the best solution going forward. I think when we start talking about affordability, I think about who gets that affordable housing. In my mind at the moment, that seems to be not really a transparent process.
Thank you. Bruce?
So when you talk about housing affordability, we focus on supply as we should. And so you look at under our administration, we've passed a groundbreaking levy with many of your help in here, $970 million. More importantly, we have put an unprecedented amount in our budget, $342 million. Now that's supplying, we did a ribbon cutting today, looking at affordable housing, making sure we could rehabilitate or build. You look at what we're doing at Fort Lawton as an example, getting as creative as possible. On the other side, you have to realize in 1950, the median house was around 2 times someone's wage. Right now, it's around 6 times someone's wage. So our income is not kept up with the price of housing. So our strategy in housing is more complex than just supply. Our whole strategy has to do with education, health outcomes, climate change, and speeding up the permit process to make sure it's easier to build. So we have a holistic approach to achieving this crisis.
Thank you. Joe Mallahan?
Thank you, Mayor. I must say, I agree completely with you. Let's speed up the permitting process. That's what a mayor should do. And permitting, I talk to people who are trying to build housing, and they're spending, they're buying land and spending a year holding that land, waiting to get the right to turn dirt on that property. I think the density plans we have are all good. I think all of our investment, $349 million, is all good. I think where we could do better is incentivizing private developers, particularly low-income tax credit housing developers, where 90% of the low income, where you build a 100-unit apartment building, and 30% of those are for 40 years targeted at low-income customers. That stuff is happening. 90% of that housing in the United States, low-income housing, is delivered through that. And our private developers have walked away from Seattle because it's too hard to permit. And I think there's an opportunity to incentivize those developers to develop in the Rainier Valley and other places where we've lost housing.
Is time. Thank you very much. Joe Malloy?
Yeah, thank you. So we need to fill in the bottom rungs of housing, and we need to do that right now. I was the only outlier when you asked the question of, do we need to build more housing to increase affordability, right? I'm getting that right? And I say no, because we don't need to build more housing. We need an actual bottom level system. It's good. All of the talk about housing affordability and increasing development, these are great things. These are still filling in rungs at the top ends of the ladder. It's not doing anything for people on the street. It's not doing anything for affordability in our lowest income areas. We don't need to build more to be able to address that. We need to be able to take bold stances. We need to be able to open up a shelter system immediately. You talked about supply. There's 2,500 shelter beds that you promised at the beginning of your first term that we're still waiting on, right? So this can be done today.
And that is time. Isaiah?
Hello, so development must serve the public, not just private profit. I propose strengthening community benefit agreements and using public land for public good, like affordable housing, childcare, and green space. We must preserve the cultural landmarks, prevent displacement, uplift the BIPOC communities we've historically burned the brunt of gentrification. Every neighborhood deserves to thrive, not just survive.
Thank you. Katie?
So yeah, I think housing affordability is probably the most fundamental problem facing our city right now. The solutions are many. So number one, zoning. We need to go further than the current comprehensive plan proposal in allowing more housing to be built in our great neighborhoods throughout the city. Social housing. Let's build social housing. We also need to make sure that we are funding the other models of affordable housing we already have, and the Jumpstart tax, which I helped to design and build, should be a robust funding source for that. Unfortunately, a lot of the money has been taken out of that funding source. for other things. We can do more to protect renters. We can ban algorithmic price fixing. We can ban rental junk fees. We can strengthen the economic displacement relocation assistance program to disincentivize large rent increases. And we can do more to prevent displacement. I think especially assisting homeowners, especially in our legacy communities who want to build ADUs or develop their own properties.
Thank you. Rye?
Thank you. I think Katie's totally right on this mark. You know, I've done 280 hours of call time to voters, called over 5,000 people, and the number one issue I hear is housing. I was canvassing in Cal Anderson just this last week, and at the end of the night, I came up to a trans woman and I was like, "Hey, do you vote in the city? Can you sign democracy vouchers?" She's like, "I'd love to, darling, but I don't know where I'm sleeping tonight." So I think the story of those individuals are so important, and we have to do better when the entire city is 70% single-family zoning. The comprehensive plan is a climate solution if we actually embrace that kind of density. Further, I think Lehigh has 100 tiny homes just sitting in Soto ready to be placed somewhere, so the city needs to be brave enough to actually take action and place those on city, county, state-owned land so that people can finally do that. And then first-time homebuyers grants. There should be expanded programs so that people can live in this city long-term and want to thrive here, and I would love to see the city government lean into that with federal or local credit unions.
Thank you. This time we will begin with Mayor Harrell. And the question is, how will Seattle achieve Vision Zero, which is the goal to have 0 people killed or seriously injured in crashes on Seattle streets by 2030, which a lot of people are feeling is an urgent need, especially as we see so many incidents like we just did with a 6-year-old being hit in a crosswalk the other day.
That saddens me. So if you look at the framework by which we built the levy out, when I talked about safety, you will see a lot of training dollars in there. So the first thing we have to look at is making sure everyone knows the rules of the road and be very consistent there. We also have to build hard structure. If you look at the light rail, for example, if you look at my executive order where I looked at some of the stations and looked at the safety issues that we have to do, we put in about $9 million in transit safety as an example. So we put hard money in for safety infrastructure on transit and around our light rail stations. The third piece of this is simply going to be we have to enforce the laws. Now, we train before we enforce, but there are people out there that are still speeding. Now, I've been elected for 16 years. I've had some tough conversations when we were talking about protecting bike lanes. We were proud that we didn't have a bike death last year because of some of the hard work of the advocates in this group. So I only have 1 minute, so I'll end there.
Thank you. Joe Mallahan?
I think we should invest more in automated traffic control. We shouldn't have police officers spending time enforcing speed limits, but we don't have effective speed limits and speed limit mechanisms in the city of Seattle. So let's invest in technology and create a system where if you're speeding, you're going to get a citation, and it's as simple as that. On another note, we don't have enough police officers, and we have a dysfunctional and demoralized police force who aren't delivering what we want them to deliver. And so my commitment is to be an activist mayor in terms of managing our relationship with the police and creating community connection to the police. I commit to do 50 ride-alongs with police to reintegrate them with the community and to enforce and to establish community policing.
Joe Malloy?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, Katie already said it a little bit, and Katie's going to be the expert on transportation stuff in this room, as she should be. Multimodal, right? So if 2030 is the goal to have 0 deaths, then it is how do we reduce the number of cars on the road? That's going to have the most one-to-one reduction in deaths. How do we protect multimodal? Through protected bike lanes, through getting, we need spots for these little scooters and things to go to. They block disability access and people in wheelchairs all across the city. And then this is another one that I don't know if everybody wants to hear. We need to get people inside. The more people we have living on the streets, the more pedestrian deaths we have on the streets, and the more danger it presents to the people living on intense on the streets that somebody has a bad day and yeah, ends a life. So we need to get people inside as well.
Isaiah?
So what I would do is I would redesign dangerous streets. I would prioritize street redesigns that slow cars, protect pedestrians and cyclists, replace 5-lane arterials like Rainier Ave, Aurora with safer human-centered designs, protected bike lanes, wider sidewalks, narrower car lanes, and raised crosswalks, implement road diets, reduce lanes in high crash corridors. I would lower speed limits and enforce them intelligently. Enforce a 20-mile-an-hour citywide speed limit on residential and urban streets. Deploy automated speed cameras with equity guidelines in more places, especially near schools, parks, and transit corridors, and use camera fines to fund pedestrian safety improvements in underserved neighborhoods.
Good point, Joe, about homelessness, I think. Yeah, I mean, we are not nearly on track to meet our Vision Zero goal of zero traffic fatalities or injuries by 2030. And how we get there, there's a lot of different parts to this, but the big thing is safe transportation infrastructure. That means building out our bicycle master plan so that we have a connected network of protected bike lanes, and that means building sidewalks, and that means traffic calming measures. This is personal for me. Before, you know, I answered that my primary form of transportation is transit, but before I had my child, I was a bicyclist. I biked everywhere, and I still walk everywhere. And so, you know, close calls all the time. We have, you know, Rainier, MLK, 4th Ave South, Lake City Way, Aurora. These are our 5 most dangerous corridors in the city. They've been our most dangerous corridors for a long time, so there's no excuse for not making safety fixes ASAP.
Thank you. Rye?
Thank you. I think Vision Zero is such a beautiful utopian future that is possible, and I want to see that for our city. I think the #1 issue I see around Vision Zero is going to be South Seattle Light Rail. It is so dangerous that it is at street level. We either need to make it lower or higher to separate that plane of mobility. And then finally, I think transit is a public safety issue. I walk on 14th Avenue on Capitol Hill, and it's like pitch black suburbia. And I'm like, why are there not streetlights in one of the richest cities in the history of humanity? So I think if we invest in that sort of safety infrastructure and prioritize pedestrians and people who roll. I didn't own a car until last year because I had to for my job. Otherwise, I would love to just get around this city using the beautiful infrastructure we have, as long as it's reliable and safe and it can get me where I need to go.
Thank you. Clinton?
I think transportation and safety, overall, we need to focus on separating pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicles, and mass transit. All of those do not go well together, and we need to have, in general, rights of way that are separate. This is why I think it would be wise in Aurora or Rainier Avenue, put that 20 feet under at the level of parking garages, make that a big green space for people and have large buildings surrounding that. I think that would make a big difference in making our city safer and more livable.
Thank you. We are now going to start the next question with Joe Mallahan. And it's Pike Place in front of the market recently closed to general traffic. Do you support making this pilot permanent? And what other streets would you prioritize for reducing or eliminating vehicle traffic to make places for people to gather?
Well, first off, I think the Pike Place experiment is a great one. It's a huge pedestrian flow. I mean, what we've accomplished with the overpass down to the waterfront, the new waterfront, is really transformational for Seattle. And so I can credit the mayor a little bit for that, and I can credit me. And the reason is, when I ran against Mike McGinn, I was pro-tunnel. And the reason I was pro-tunnel is we need to connect the community to the salt water and the environment that is the Salish Sea. And we've accomplished that to a large degree now. In terms of other places to, you know, there's high streets all over the city. I don't have a particular perspective on that, but it's certainly a reasonable goal to find avenues or adjacencies to high streets to make pedestrians only. It creates great community. And it creates great commerce. I'm all for that.
Thank you. Joe Malloy?
Yeah, so this is a good question. I absolutely support that, like shutting down Pike. I was a gig driver, like a delivery driver for about 2.5 years, struggling to find other work. And when I was doing that, I was supportive of making Pike Market inaccessible to cars. It's dangerous. So Ballard Avenue comes to mind. The section in Capitol Hill where they do the farmers market is at Chunn or Olive, right there is another great one. But really, like with this in mind, this is an issue to plug in this community specifically. Like we have networks of people who are spending 30, 40, 50 hours driving around our city, getting feedback from our app workers, from our drivers, about like what sort of roads are truly inaccessible, what needs improvement. Oh, this one died as well. We can all project, but yeah, creating a pathway for that kind of connection so that we can know like who's affected most by our roads and what we should keep open. I think this one might have some left.
We do seem to have 2 dead mics, Crystal.
Yeah.
Do we have any other mics, or should we?
Someone's having feedback before, but we can try it again.
All right.
This one's kind of working again.
Well,
Should we try this?
Let's try it.
Hello, my name is Isaiah Willoughby. So I would expand car-free zones, permanently pedestrianize Pike Place, Post Alley, parts of Capitol Hill, or the waterfront, create new car-free corridors in dense neighborhoods like U District, Rainier Beach, or Chinatown. I would open streets on weekends, closing key streets to cars for walking, biking, art, and small business activities. I would make Stay Healthy Streets permanent. I would formalize and expand Seattle's Stay Healthy Streets program. I would turn low traffic neighborhood streets into greenways with landscaping, art, play zones, slow traffic limits.
Thank you.
Okay. On Pike Place, absolutely, and instead of crediting the mayor or Joe Mallahan, I'm going to credit all the advocates who spent years and years and years fighting for that. Yeah, in terms of, I mean, I think that every neighborhood should have a car-free area. Now, I understand that it's a sensitive issue, and often businesses are afraid of what's going to happen to their customer base, so we need to do it sensitively. I think piloting is a good way to do it. Definitely what Joe mentioned here, Barbara Bailey Way, I think the portion of Denny Ave on Capitol Hill is right for that. Super Block on Capitol Hill in the Pike Pine area, the Ave in the U District. We can do more on Lake Washington Boulevard, I think. Yeah, I think, yeah, around the city, let's do this. I mean, there's cities around the world which have done this, and it just is so, such a huge boon to people's quality of life.
Thank you. Bri?
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, Superblock. It's like you're my neighbor or something up on Capitol Hill. I think the Superblock's a great idea. Those stop signs on Pike, when you're going there, especially late at night when nightlife is active, is not a safe place to be for a car coming through with a bunch of pedestrians. It's a recipe for disaster. Further, I think Pike Place should be permanently locked off from cars, unless maybe early morning deliveries, but world-class cities can figure this out, and they do that, and I think we could do that in Pike Place, especially if we can connect the streetcar along First Avenue or the waterfront so that people can get easier access to that space. Finally, I think even more importantly, we do not know what the future will hold for this country and our region, and so protecting with bollards such an important place where so many pedestrians are. I want to be proactive in making sure that we are safeguarding the heart of our city, which is, for me, Pike Place Market and the neighborhood, which we love.
Thank you. Clinton?
So I think the current process of blocking off streets is just going to make more traffic somewhere else. And I think we need to think systemically about this. Again, I would vote for bike lanes. I would recommend those go through predominantly single-family areas where there's less traffic, and close those streets to just residential use. And then, as before, I would recommend that on our very busy streets, we put the cars down under where we can have more capacity and make it so that the pedestrian flow can be safe up above.
And Mayor Bruce Harrell will have the last word.
Well, number one, you guys time it that way? Test, okay. Don't start my clock. So I never worry about who gets the damn credit on anything. So forget that stuff, number one. But I will ask the question, how come no other mayor did it? I'll just ask you the question. I was very fortunate to travel with Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation, to a G7 conference to talk about us being one of the most pedestrian-friendly cities in the nation. And you hear me talk about it. If you look at what we put in the levy, when you look at the sidewalks, for example, we will do 250 blocks within the first 4 years, 350 new blocks of sidewalk. We put in for Vision Zero double the amount of the prior levy. We were very aggressive. When you look at what we're trying to do at Westlake at the Overlook Walk, when you look at what we're doing with our safe routes to schools for our kids. So under my administration, with your help, we are going to be one of the most walkable cities with a walkable score to be the envy of other cities in this country. And that's why we made the shift from Pike Place, just to sort of show what can be done when we think smartly.
And that is our forum. Thank you so much to the candidates. Right on Joe Callahan, Joe Malloy, Isaiah Willoughby, and Jeanie Wilson. And if you all will indulge me briefly, just wave hello. I love this turnout tonight. All the community turning out to hear from their candidates for office. Thank you so much. Thank you to the organizing committee of the Seattle State Coalition. Please have a safe evening. Thank you.
Nice.
Also, last thing, thank you everybody, the candidates, and all y'all audience. Have a great day.